Some Colorado workers work outside the state of Colorado, truck drivers, construction workers, even professional sports players. What happens if they're injured in another state? Are they covered under Colorado law? We're going to talk about This is Kaplan Morrell with the Colorado law firm Kaplan Morrell. We've been helping injured and disabled workers and their families get the benefits they deserve for work injuries since 1997. If this video helps you, be sure to hit like or subscribe. Comment below. We'd love to have you be part of our online community. And with that, let's dive into it. I'm going to be discussing two common situations where workers are injured outside of Colorado, but they are still entitled to Colorado workers' compensation benefits. Now, to get covered under Colorado law for workers' compensation, we have to consider three things: whether you were hired in Colorado, when you got injured, and is your employer subject to the laws of Colorado. And stick to the end, and we'll discuss one group of Colorado employees that simply will never get covered under workers' compensation. How can that be? So the first thing we need to know is whether you were hired in Colorado. And when you get hired, you're forming a contract. So the question is where were you hired in Colorado? And case law basically says, look, the courts are going to look to see where the communication took place, where was the offer made, where was it accepted, etc. And as long as the fundamental parts of a contract are present, which is basically five things: offer, acceptance, capacity, consideration, legality. If all of those things occurred in Colorado, then they're going to consider you as having been hired in Colorado. So these days, people are getting hired online. They'll answer an ad online. There may be a phone call, and who initiates the phone call? Is it someone in Colorado calling someone in Michigan? Is it someone in Michigan calling someone in Colorado? Did you go out to Michigan and that's where you had the interview and that's where the offer was? All of these things are going to determine where the contract of hire was created, especially if it's one of those weird situations where you don't go somewhere to apply and interview, etc., but you're doing it over phone, over Zoom, etc. But you're going to have to first show that you were hired in Colorado. Now, if you were hired in Colorado, then we need to ask another question, which is, when did you get injured? And the reason that that's important is because if you work out of state and you've been there a long time and you get injured, they're going to consider, no, you were really an employee in that state and covered under that state's case laws. So typically, if you've been injured within 6 months of leaving Colorado, you are still covered under Colorado law, unless your employer agrees explicitly to cover you longer under Colorado law. But there's one exception based upon the due process clause in, believe it or not, the U.S. Constitution. And that is, in 1945, the U.S. Supreme Court decided a case called International Shoe Company versus Washington, which basically held that companies, in order to be sued in a state, had to have what was called minimum contacts in the state to be subject to their laws. And so there was a case in workers' compensation where North Dakota company hired a guy named Miner to work on their site. He had responded to an online job posting. He was hired. He was flown out. And 2 days later, he was injured. And the court found in that case the first two elements had been satisfied. He was hired in Colorado, and the injury occurred within 6 months of being hired. Even still, he wasn't given Colorado workers' compensation rights because the employer just did no business at all in Colorado. They didn't specifically recruit Colorado residents. They didn't send representatives to Colorado. They didn't have a business location in Colorado. And so therefore, even though the guy was kind of hired in Colorado, like over the phone, and he got injured within 6 months, he still wasn't covered. Now, why does this matter? Because Colorado workers' compensation benefits are determined by Colorado law, and not surprisingly, other states have different laws, and some states are better than others. And so if you have been hired in Colorado and injured elsewhere, and that elsewhere has less favorable benefits under workers' compensation than Colorado, then you want to get covered under Colorado workers' compensation law. Conversely, if that other state has better benefits, maybe you don't want to have it covered under Colorado workers' compensation law. It can get really complicated. One example of that, one weird or unusual type of employment that's immune from workers' compensation, is if you are an employee of an Indian tribe. And Indian tribes have basically, especially like in the Four Corners area, they hire workers. They're in Colorado, you're working for them, and Indian tribes are immune from a lot of state laws, including workers' compensation. And so you can be hired in Colorado, work in Colorado, get injured in Colorado, and not be covered if you're working for an Indian tribe, a recognized federally Indian tribe. As you can tell, a lot of times these things are complicated, but what I want you to know is if you've been injured in Colorado or outside of Colorado, but you were hired in Colorado, etc., it serves your interest to contact us, contact a lawyer to find out what state is the better state for you to seek your remedies, because sometimes it may be Colorado, sometimes it may be another state. Whether or not you can even choose is a question. We deal with this a lot of times with truckers, flight attendants, etc. So if you or someone you know has been injured on the job, please give us a call. You can call us, you can text us, you can visit our website. Our initial consultations are free, confidential, and they'll give you peace of mind knowing your rights. And with that, thank you for spending part of your day with me.